I just want to begin today's video by saying thank you to all the veterans watching right now for making the ultimate sacrifice to protect our great country. It's a debt that we can never repay, but thank you to all the veterans watching today. Now let's get into today's video and talk all about Jedrick Wills, who kind of captured Brown's Twitter and Brown's social media by storm today by saying he made a business decision. The term business decision, or the phrase, is somewhat new to the sports world, and it's kind of a joke when you see guys kind of check out of a game mid-play or something. You go, he's making a business decision, but when you hear a player actually use the words business decision, it's going to get a lot of attention. He was speaking to the media today as the Browns return from their bye week, which I have some good news on that, by the way, for tomorrow's video. And when talking to the media about being benched essentially the last two games, he talked about how he got injured in the Bengals game and he wasn't healthy enough for the Ravens game, so he, quote, made a business decision. Here's what he said. On getting benched, it was pretty shocking. I decided myself that I made a business decision not to play after the Bengals game going into that Ravens game because I was injured. Jed, I got some bad news for you. For your own business, which is staying employed in the National Football League, you need to play. You have not shown the NFL through 4 or 5 seasons at this point that you are a starting caliber franchise left tackle. It is in your best interest to play. Now, I feel like saying I didn't play because I was injured is actually a pretty fair reason to say you're not playing. If he had said, I didn't play because I got wind that they wanted to start Dawand Jones and I was upset by that, then screw you. These fans are paying hundreds of dollars to come to games, and for players to sit out because their feelings got hurt over a personnel change, yeah, that's not going to sit well. But saying you made a business decision because you were injured, that actually makes some level of sense if you felt like, hey, I'm injured and I can't play. He also shared what was kind of nonchalant for him, but kind of gruesome for us about how he couldn't bend his knee and they were draining fluids after the Bengals game. So when you say that stuff, okay, I can understand why you didn't play. But when you say you didn't play because it was a business decision and you're not having a very good season, it's not going to go over well with the fan base. As a son of a season ticket holder, we see how much these ticket prices go up every single year. Get these BS emails from ownership and team presidents in the offseason talking about how sorry we are this season did not go to plan. And at the very end, they go, well, by the way, we're going to increase ticket prices by 5%. So don't tell us business decisions and then expect fans to turn up and continue to watch a 2-7 product at this point. But Wills has not been very good this year. He's been underwhelming as a first-round draft pick. At best, he is ranking 52nd out of 83 qualifying tackles. We're not even talking about being in the top half of all tackles in football. Jed Wills, through and through, is probably a swing tackle for the next 4 to 5 seasons of his career. If he can find a starting caliber job after this season, I'll be genuinely surprised. If a team goes out in free agency and goes, we would like to sign Jedrick Wills to be our next starting left tackle, color me shocked. I don't think that's going to happen. And if he wants to see that happen, he needs to do everything in his power to get back on the field. And voluntarily sitting out because you want to make a business decision is bad for business for Jed. It's in his best interest to put out the best possible game tape because the last game tape we've seen of him is not starting caliber worthy in the National Football League. This is probably the end of the Jed Wills era in Cleveland. I don't think that's a huge surprise to anyone. He's in a contract season right now, and he is getting benched. That, to me, does not scream, here's someone the Browns plan to re-sign. So what's ultimately going to be a failure of a draft pick given where he went 9th overall and the expectations that come with being a top 10 draft pick, that's not someone who's just supposed to be there for 4 or 5 years. That's a guy who's going to get a second contract, be a hopeful perennial Pro Bowler, and be a routine day one starter for you for 8 to 10 seasons. He's going to fall short of that by about 50%. Now, before we get any further in today's episode, because we have more to talk about on this subject, I do want to give a big shout out to a new sponsor here at Chat Sports, and that is Ollie. So, Ollie is clean, fresh, and nutritious food for your dog. Right now, Ollie is offering a fantastic deal to let your pup taste test a personalized meal plan. Get 60% off your first box of meals when you use promo code ChatSports at Ollie.com. In 5 flavors they'll absolutely love. You don't have to be a vet to know that feeding your dog real, whole foods with minimal processing is one of the best choices you can make for their health. A perfectly proportioned, whole, fresh diet has been proven to extend your pup's life by 2.5 years. Who doesn't want more time with their best friend? Now, I can speak from experience that my dog has a sensitive stomach. If we change up her dog food, it usually does not end well the very next morning. And here's Cruz right here, and you can tell she's a very happy camper because, believe it or not, despite her very sensitive stomach, she has really loved Ollie. I mean, we put it on top of her food to start with just to ease her in from her previous kibble, and now I've honestly never seen her run faster to her dog bowl thanks to Ollie. So, get started today. Head to Ollie.com. Tell them all about your dog. Use Chat Sports and you'll get 60% off your first box of meals when you subscribe today. Head to OLLIE.com and enter code CHATSPORTS to get 60% off your first box. They'll offer a clean bowl guarantee on their first box, so if you're not completely satisfied, you can get your money back. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Don't take my word for it. Take Cruz's word for it. Now, the financial implications of moving on from Wills, despite being a free agent, is not actually super simple. The Browns, before the year, restructured Wills' contract. They lowered his cap hit for 2024, and they added void years to 2025, all the way to 2028. And if they when they move on from Jed Wills, and by move on, I mean they do not extend his contract, and his contract will void at some point in March, most likely, the Browns are going to take on an $11.8 million dead cap hit. What does that mean? Well, it means Jed Wills is going to have some money added to the pot, along with Amari Cooper and Zadarius Smith and a lot of other players the Browns have moved on from, that's going to take away from their spending power in 2025. Now, I know that sounds scary, and it's not awesome. I honestly don't think that restructuring Jed Wills' contract was a great move, because usually you want to do that for a player that you feel like could get a contract extension, and you can fill these void years with actual years of service. Clearly, we're not anywhere near that happening. This is probably going to be a mistake by Andrew Berry. I mean, you can restructure a lot of players' contracts to free up immediate cap space, but somewhat kick the can down the road. And it's not as bad as that sounds, because the NFL salary cap, barring another global pandemic, is always going to go up. So a player having an $11 million cap hit in 2020 versus an $11 million cap hit in 2025, from a percentage standpoint, is vastly different, because the salary cap in 2020 might be like $240 million, whereas in 2025, it could be $290 million. So $11 million in 2020 is very different in 2025, with a $40 million difference in the salary cap. That's why the Browns operate under this way. They are always going to push cap hits later down the road, because the salary cap, barring another Coco happening, is always going to go up, 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 and up. And that way, you have maximum spending ability right now, and the percentage cap hit is not as vast, or is not as great or big down the road as it is at the moment. I know I kind of just did a quick flyover of the way the salary cap works, and it's very complex, and it's somewhat of a myth, but it's very true at the same time. But ultimately, I think if the Browns had an option to hit a undo button on restructuring Jed Wills' contract and just eating it all this year and not having an $11 million dead cap hit awaiting them next season, they probably would do that based on the way Wills has played this season. Now, let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about another storyline that's kind of been gaining some traction on the web, and that is ESPN Cleveland's Tony Grossi saying that Daniel Jones could be a viable option for the Browns next season. Jones and the Giants fell flat on their face in Germany, losing to the Carolina Panthers in what's been a very rough season for Daniel Jones for the most part, having a couple of good moments like beating the Browns for one, but by and large it has been underwhelming, especially when you look at what the Giants gave him in free agency a few years ago. I would rather stick with Deshaun Watson. I also think it's worth noting that if we're comparing Deshaun Watson right now and Daniel Jones, we are comparing, would you rather throw up or have diarrhea? Neither one's a very good option. So I don't think anyone can have too strong of an opinion when it comes to a mid-off here. One's ass and one's cheeks. Like, okay. I mean, I'm going to say Watson, but I'm not going to die on this hill. Like, look at their stats over their last 17 starts. For Watson, I removed the Colts game from last year when he only played the first quarter. And then I did the same thing for Daniel Jones in the home loss to the Raiders last season. We're similar to Watson. He only played a couple of snaps and then got injured. So it's basically their true last 17 starts. There are some things Daniel Jones has better numbers at. Completion percentage, yards. And there's numbers that Watson has better numbers at. Touchdowns, interceptions. But neither one's a great option. So I'd probably rather just stick with Deshaun Watson since you're already paying him. So I'm not spending more on the quarterback position than the Browns already are just to get a guy who is, if better at all, so marginally, it's unnoticeable given the restraints Daniel Jones will be working with a Browns roster that's not going to have a very good offensive line next year most likely and is not going to have incredible playmakers to elevate Jones, which he really desperately needs if he's going to be successful. So my guess is the Browns quarterback room next year is going to be Deshaun Watson. Financially, I don't think the Browns are going to be able to move on from him. Whoever plays well or better over the next 8 or 9 weeks between DTR and Jameis Winston will probably come back. If Winston plays super well, then I sure hope they're not going to make the same mistake they did with Joe Flacco and let him walk in free agency. If Winston plays more like he did in his second start compared to his first start, then he's probably going to get benched soon, and then they'll turn to DTR. And if DTR plays okay, he's still on his rookie contract, so you don't have much to gain by moving on from him other than opening up a roster spot. And then I sure hope the Browns draft a quarterback. Doesn't have to be in round 1, but at some point, you got to bring in a rookie and see if your coaching staff can get something out of a new QB. When it comes to drafting a quarterback, though, it'll likely just come down to where the Browns are picking and who is available. We're so far from the NFL draft that I don't think we can look too closely at it because the Browns might fall in love with Cam Ward. He might be their favorite quarterback prospect. We might hear about all these Cam Ward stories in a podcast 5-6 years from now. But all that is mute if the Browns get the 7th overall pick and he goes first overall, right? What if a team like the Panthers continues to lose, or I guess win, or the Giants lose, right? We don't know who's going to end up with the first overall pick, but if they love a quarterback, they're not going to trade out of it. So I would not get too invested in what quarterback are the Browns can take in round 1 until we even know what pick the Browns have in round number 1 and have a rough idea as to where these quarterbacks are going to go. If the quarterback they love is available when they are on the clock, then that's going to be their pick. But I don't think we can look too closely at this until we know where they're picking. Now, one guy who's definitely going to be available when they're on the clock in round 1, it is probably going to be available into day 2 of the draft, is Indiana's quarterback. Let's talk about Kurtis Rourke for a second here. He started off at Ohio, then he transfers to IU, and like the entire Hoosier team, he is putting up incredible numbers this season, completing nearly 72% of his passes, 2,400 yards, 21 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, while he throws to future accountants and definitely not NFL players. No offense to the Hoosier receiving corps. But I don't think we're going to see Rourke go any earlier than round 2 of the draft or round 3. So I would not take him in round 1 or round 2. Maybe in round 3, especially with having 2 third-round picks. You kind of had the luxury of using one to take a flyer on a QB that maybe you didn't do if you didn't have a second, third-round pick, but you do for now. So keep an eye on him, especially as we get closer to that Indiana-Ohio State game. That's going to be a really fun matchup, but Kurtis Rourke could be an option for the Browns in day 2. I want to see how the rest of this college football season plays out before we get too in the weeds on quarterback prospect and targets. I'll also add this. I am against trading up for a quarterback. I don't think this quarterback class is good enough to warrant giving up a ton of valuable future assets to secure one of these players. And 2, I don't think the Browns can afford to make that big of a gamble after not having a first-round draft pick for 2022, 2023, and 2024. You can't go 3 years with no first-round pick and then trade up for a rookie and then forfeit future first-round draft picks and zoom out and go, hey, in this 5-year stretch, 6-year stretch, we had one first-rounder. You can't do it. I forbid them from doing it. It's too risky. And also, there's no guarantee after drafting this quarterback that you traded up for, he's going to be any good in a system and roster that is aging offensively and defensively and doesn't have a good enough number of assets to build around that quarterback. You're talking about being the next Carolina Panthers with Bryce Young all over again. So, hard no on trading up for a quarterback after going 3 years with no first-round pick and not having a good enough, young enough roster to surround this rookie QB with. You've got talent, but not at places that really help a rookie quarterback. Myles Garrett's not going to do a whole lot for Cam Ward. Neither is Denzel Ward or JOK. What Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders would need would be a good offensive line, a great receiving core. That's not in the cards in the future. So, no go. But which quarterback do you want to see the Browns draft in the upcoming NFL draft? They definitely should take a quarterback. Where? That's up for debate. But they definitely should take one. So let me know in the comment section below who you want to see the Browns select.